Yes, yes, Sir Hairless here. We are back with the Dimash, and this is Battle of Memories, or rather Eternal Memories, which is the name of the theme song from the film called Battle of Memories. This will be sung in Chinese. It was the winner of our last Dimash poll. I do occasionally do these on YouTube, but if you want to vote on weekly polls, you can do so by joining our Patreon, which is linked below. The lyrics for this one are on the screen now, translated for you to have a pause and a read. Other than that, let's get straight into it. This is the official video, and being part of a film, I imagine it could be quite high quality.
等到那个时候啊，我担心的是这段记忆就得永远留在你脑袋里，值吗？
那让凶手逍遥法外值吗？让我跟我太太永远活在恐惧中值吗？
Very James Bond.
不能为了抓到一个怪物，而去制造另外一个怪物。
I guess that's clips from the film.
你我的寂寞该从哪里人走？绝望的沉默，激动的诉说，都不是挽救，而是手足无措。
Immediately, well, my immediate thoughts, it's an interesting one. One, the video, high quality, black and white, the theme. The music, I think we can all agree, does sound like it could be something out of James Bond. That's mostly due to the instrumentation, I feel, when you have the brass coming in and taking over from the sound, or a sort of rhythmic alternation, typically in the piano. Dum, bum, 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 bum. Higher up, of course, as we are hearing right now. A lot of the James Bond type music works so well and has almost become its own genre in a way, is because of the intensity. You know, the James Bond stories are, well, intense. There are near-death experiences, there's always tragedy. So when Dimash starts singing here in that lovely, lovely airy voice of his, which, if you've seen my videos before, you'll know I am a huge fan of, then we immediately get this contrast of ideas that shouldn't really work together that well. But from the 1 minute we've heard so far, maybe 30 seconds really, because there was clips from the film, it seemed, they do work well. And I love that in music, when things that maybe shouldn't work do. Although with Dimash, I feel like anything will work if he's singing. Very interesting bass line. That's the thing that's mostly caught my attention. So the left hand of the piano, which is falling, I'll probably touch on that in a bit more detail. Let's carry on for now.
幸福从最高点坠落，抹在回忆两盏烛火，恍如割舍的人舍你舍我，拿得走感想，拿不走感动，怎不怕割舍一切，只在相拥，拿得走时光，拿不走旧梦，为你去翻滚波动，才会懂得忘我的感动。
Oh yeah, there's one of the main things is the speed with which Dimash is changing between his voice types. There are a few things I want to point out, so we'll do a little pause now, just go over a few of the more interesting aspects that we've heard so far. Just before we do that though, in the poll, I received a lot of comments telling me that there are multiple different versions of this song, Battle of Memories. One version in particular I saw was very divisive. There were some comments from people saying they absolutely hate it, and other comments from people saying that they adore it. That was the Macau performance, but one thing that everyone did agree with was the fact that it's very different to this. So we will be watching the Macau version after I finish this reaction on the official video version. I'll include my full video, including that other performance and reaction, linked below in the pinned comment if you're interested. Right, that was unexpected. Over there, you'll also be able to find the other additional Dimash content we've done, such as other live performances or behind the scenes. All right, so the music. There's that brass, so typical of, yes, I'm going to say it again, James Bond or James Bond type music. I know there are different theme songs for each film. Just in case you don't know James Bond, let's find a theme tune. The one that immediately comes to mind is Sam Smith, who sang Writing on the Wall. That was from the film Spectre, I think came out in 2015, I want to say. Let's see. Right, here we are, 2015, October. Let's listen to how it starts. What are the three main elements? We have the kind of timpani opening, you know, the percussion, but tuned right at the bottom. What do we get here? The brass coming through there, the trumpets, and of course the violins at the top with a kind of intense melody. Writing on the Wall. Oh, and then the horns coming through, and horns are just so cinematic. I'll be listening out for them in Battle of Memories. Anyway, you get my point. I'm not gonna go into more detail on that one. So as I said before, immediate intensity gripping us. We're wondering what's going to happen next. And for any Dimash fans, we're of course waiting for him to start singing. The violins went higher than we might expect. It's like a call and response figure, but instead of going down, now it goes up. Our expectations are now shattered. What's going to happen? But instead of continuing to rise, it sinks back down. Who's this shaded, hooded figure?
我们不能为了抓到一个怪物，而去制造另外一个怪物。
There's not just a delay in the singing by having spoken film clips here. There was actually a delay in sound overall, even before the film clips came in. It was making me doubt my memory. The melody is repeating that phrase twice in a row, but it sounds slightly different. Why? Because of the harmony underneath. In other words, the chords are changing ever so slightly. The melody does work with both. One repetition a tiny bit more dissonant than the other one, but this leads into the point I mentioned before, which is the bass line, the left hand of the piano. Which is working both kind of with Dimash in terms of the direction they're moving, but also in the opposite direction. The piano is basically falling, but Dimash is moving up and then back down and then back up. So it's a bit of a mix of both. That bass line though that we heard. That phrase that we've just heard now repeats. This is embedded in our head. We're kind of expecting it again. Dimash's melody is the same, so he objectively doesn't have too much to work with here. Because it's the same melody, this is where his vocal style and all the choices he makes come in. We'll get on to that in a second. Let's listen out to the bass line again. Same second note. Oh, that's different. Bum, bum. That's chromatic. Before we had... Now we have... So what's coming next? Is it going to finish off the same? No, it doesn't. It just jumps. So we go from this to this. Why I'm focusing on the bass line instead of the other parts is maybe it's just a personal thing, but the bass is often the harmonic foundation underneath everything. It stands out, it provides support almost, if we can think of it like that. And it's a very powerful part, one of the most powerful parts in this particular bit of music, in my opinion. It has significance, so when it's kind of changing a little bit and defying expectations, that's interesting. It adds a layer of intensity, not through power or volume like we had with the trumpets or horns coming through or the violins. No, it's simple intensity, and that's where Dimash's singing comes in, and it works so well.
幸福从最高点坠落，莫在回忆两盏烛火。
he's still predominantly airy, but just at the top of the phrases, at those kind of pitches there, towards his higher chest voice, now the power's coming through. But he keeps teasing us. Interesting little harmonic. Now the phrase is repeated, the first phrase. Second time round though, he's moving up. We have more instruments in the background, there's a fuller sound, in other words, perhaps more intense. But Dimash, he doesn't budge, he's still singing softly, he knows what will work. And yeah, it's so interesting. As he moves higher up, you might expect there to be more power, but no, he does the opposite. Switching between full voice or slightly blended voice to airy, to full to airy, almost on every consecutive note, which is crazy. How often do you hear that? There are the horns coming through.
今天老太太看我的眼神，就像看一个怪物。最在乎的人能让人醉酒，因为还有爱沉默，情绪汹涌。Yeah, so not really too many new musical ideas. We have a new beat coming in, which gives quite a little bit of a different feel, much more of a modern feel rather than an orchestral movie track perhaps. Dimash's melody though, and the way he's choosing to sing, nothing new, nothing major, he's not going crazy. I don't know how much say he will have over this performance as a whole. If you know, please do let me know in the comments. As this was part of a film project, was it more you're going to come in and do what we say, or you, Dimash, if you think it should be sung this way, please sing it that way, you know best. I'm always curious how these things work behind the scenes. And in terms of the instrumentation, there are new layers coming in that add a bit more dissonance. There was the line this major third, which is the major third of C major. And in the bass, we do have this C as well, but the harmony around it is D minor. So we have a C in the bass and those two notes as well. Intensity through dissonance. Subtle. What isn't so subtle is the harshness of that sound. It sounds kind of like a bell, a doorbell or something. The bass line underneath has moved away from just a piano hand. Now it's an actual bass, electric bass, it sounds like, with a bit more rhythms. Dum, dum, boom, boom. You know, it's not so rigid like the piano part. Cha, 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 cha. Dimash's melody is still quite rigid. It's the same as before. He's not only singing in the same style of voice and the same notes, the same octaves, he's not changing up the rhythms either, which is cool. I think when we have these repeated ideas with not too much change, we'll always, at least subconsciously, be familiar with it because we've heard it before. If you enjoy these videos or find them helpful, please consider supporting me. Patreon has a bunch of exclusive benefits, behind the scenes videos, additional reaction content, Q&A videos, and more. For a one-time donation, you can donate me a hot chocolate at the Buy Me a Coffee link, or become a YouTube member for these groovy emojis and membership badges. And a huge thank you to these lovely people on the screen now. 幸福从最高点坠落，摩擦回忆酿成烛火，恍如割舍的人舍你舍我，那的做感伤，那不做感动。 曾不怕割舍一切，只在意相拥。那得走奢光，那不走旧梦。 That was a very interesting section, that style of singing from Dimash there, his voice tone or texture. That's not something we hear too often from him. With hints of the operatic tenor Dimash, as I'd call, coming through there. It's much less of a pure sound, I think. Almost in between pure Dimash and powerful Dimash. In my head, there are just, I don't know how many, but very many different Dimashes, all with a adjective before them. Probably not the best for explaining what I'm hearing, but it works for me. Who's doing the backing vocals? I was trying to listen out if it's Dimash himself, multi-tracked. Again, a nice sort of call and response with one of the backing lines, and then the other are these intense ho, ho. Makes for really interesting texture, and then you have a combination, well, it's very orchestral, movie scene type score, a mix of everything, staccato, disjointed notes, the violins long sustained coming through, of course the focal point being Dimash, and this is a little bit of his vocal acrobatic section. I personally do prefer how he sings the last bit of that phrase compared to... Much more of a natural sound. I am watching this in 2025. I don't know when you'll be watching this, but I think we can definitely hear how his voice has matured a little bit since then. This video was uploaded in 2020, but the film, I believe, was 2017. Much more dissonant now, the end of that phrase ending on compared to the chord around it. Boom, you know, in the bass there. So Dimash is here, the bass is here, I'm playing it up an octave so it's easier to see. But then in the backing vocals, we have this, move it down the octave, the dissonance it's creating there, yeah. Interesting one. Big sound at the end there. Quite subtly piercing through, if I can say that at the end. I can't tell if that's a vocal or something else, even with the A on top. And again, that type of singing just before the final phrase. It's almost a type of singing that would suit old English punk rock quite well. Maybe quite a niche reference. But then a much more full, proper operatic type sound at the end. Yeah, really interesting song, especially considering the context of it being a film soundtrack. I think I will forever associate that with James Bond just because of the stylistic similarities. But yeah, a nice one. Why I was doing that earlier. That piano part, which is still there, rigid as always, firm, stubborn, not changing. Jump, 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 jump. But what has changed is the harmony it's bringing. It's a direct clash now that we're hearing, alternating between and back and forth. And then when the lower part moves down, the upper two parts stay. But the lower part moves down to here, alternating between these two, which is quite odd. And that's the kind of pre-climactic ending rhythmic surprise. Well, there we go. Battle of memories or Eternal Memories, as the soundtrack name is, kind of makes me want to watch the film. Well, now we are going to watch the Macau performance. So if you'd like to join me with that one, head on over to the link in the pinned comment. And if not, thank you as always for watching. Would appreciate a like, share, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time.